Good morning to you from Amsterdam for the 42nd edition of this famous big city marathon, coming to you live from the city's famous Olympic Stadium. Well, the conditions here in Amsterdam this morning a little on the warm side, as they are across many countries in Europe, with temperatures around 14 degrees already here just before the start of the marathon. And as you can see, they're forecast to rise to around 20 degrees by 11:30 local time, which will be when the elite runners come back into the stadium. Well, Amsterdam is known as one of the world's great tourist cities, with some famous landmarks, including the Rijksmuseum, Anne Frank House and the beautiful Amstel River. We're going to take a few moments at the start of our broadcast now to enjoy some of the city's famous attractions. Well, Amsterdam is known in international marathon circles as having a very fast course. There's the course record set by Daniel Wanjiru in last year's race, 2:05:20, which places Amsterdam in the top 10 of the big city marathons. Very fast and flat here, and the fast course, I think, is a further reason why runners from all over the world are attracted here. 127 nationalities represented in today's race, 16,000 participants in the marathon, and a further 20,000 starting the half marathon later today. Well, we're going to give you a flavour of the mix of international runners from all across the world as they came to the marathon.
We are from Israel.
We are actually from India, and this is the first time we are going to participate in the marathon.
Portugal! Portugal!
It's a great event, we enjoy it here. So this year also we are very excited.
Just to have a good race, start well, finish strong, and not collapse. That's the plan.
Try to do it in 4 hours, but we'll see.
This is a fantastic moment for our life. Thank you very much for the moment.
but the important is to have a good race, and that's it. The finish.
And enjoy this city, fantastic city. We love this city.
Well, it does help being one of Europe's great tourist cities. Around a half of the 45,000 participants today are from outside Holland. 4,000 from the UK, 3,000 from France, 2,000 from Germany, and surprisingly, over 1,000 participants from India. Well, we're going to take a moment now just to look at the course route for the marathon runners. It heads out past the famous Rijksmuseum and then heads south down towards the banks of the Amstel River, doing an out and back out to Oudekerk and coming back on the south bank before heading into the business district and past the old harbour area at 35k before heading back through Vondel Park into the Olympic Stadium. Well, another world-class field here in Amsterdam for today's race. A clutch of very strong African runners, and there's the fastest runner in the field. The 25-year-old Ethiopian Tesfaye Abada has a best time of 2 hours, 4 minutes and 24 seconds, which he recorded in Dubai just under 2 years ago. And since then, he's had one or two problems. He competed in the Olympic marathon last year in Rio, but failed to finish and could only manage 17th place in the London Marathon earlier this year. So Tesfaye Abada, one of today's race favourites, and he'll be looking to attack Wanjiru's course record and also try to
I started 2011 in Amsterdam Marathon. That was my first marathon. I had no experience about a marathon, so I was going there just to try my best, because at first I was ranked just number 52, because I had no any personal best in marathon. I was going there to try to see if I'm going to beat 2.9 or 2.8. So unfortunately I ran 2.6. Yeah.
I started marathon in 2016, where I ran Rome Marathon. I ran position 1 to 2.8.12 on 2016. At the same year, I go to Amsterdam. He gave me position 11 to 9.06.
It's my first marathon, and I'm excited by the distance. I mean, it's a very hard distance to run, no matter what pace you run. I want to at least run a national record. I would love to run my first marathon in under 2.7 and hopefully show that I'm a force to be reckoned with in the future on the distance.
Actually, that 2906 remain in my mind and give me to remember the soil of Holland, Netherlands, where I love to go back there again to see if I will try to run my course record there. That's give me morale to know that I will make it.
If I'm not going to win, I want to see another personal best again.
The plan would be in the next 2 or 3 years to run under 2.5, to run to be the fastest non-African ever, and everyone's beatable.
I focus in Amsterdam, nothing else.
It's all about belief.
Well, Zane Robertson of New Zealand, the interesting addition to today's world-class lineup, and as I say, trying to get his name in and amongst those Kenyan and Ethiopian athletes who have won this race for the past 16 years. Wilson Chebet, a 3-time former champion here in Amsterdam, won in 2011, 2012 and 2013. And sitting alongside me here in the commentary box is Rob Walker, who commentates at many of these big city marathons. Rob, good morning to you. Great to have you here in Amsterdam. What are you looking forward to in today's race?
Yes, good morning, Richard. And first of all, thanks for having me as we look at the stats there for Caroline Rotic, who is the second fastest in the field on paper for the women's race. There were one or two rumours she may not be here, but she is. 2:23.22 set when she won Boston, one of the big ones a couple of years ago. I'm just really delighted to be here. I mean, it's such a historic setting for athletics and distance running, Richard, to start and finish in the Olympic Stadium from all those years ago in 1928. I mean, we're not far off their century anniversary. And, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Wilson Chibet is known as Mr. Amsterdam. And I know you've been speaking about him already, but he's 32. Yes, he's won it 3 times, and he's won Rotterdam as well, but only 5th in Boston this year. So a bearer with that lightning quick 2:04.24 is by some margin the fastest in the field. And hey, 2:04.24 means he's the 13th fastest in history. As we look at Tadeusz Bekele, 2:22.23 earlier this year when she was 3rd in Prague. That you can see is her lifetime best. 2nd in Toronto last year. 4 times, by the way, she's gone inside 2:25, and she was 5th in the African Cross Country Championships a couple of years ago. So she's a proven performer. We will, of course, be getting very excited about the women's race, but in terms of strength and depth, it's the men's race that's really, really appealing. We just saw Laban Korea going through shot there, and there's Amos Kipruto. Kipruto won Seoul this year in a new lifetime best, 2:05.54. One of the pacemakers there, 80. That's Albert Kangogo, who himself is a 59.25 half marathon runner. That tells you everything about the quality of the field when a pacemaker has run comfortably inside 60 minutes. I just think it's going to be 2 great races. You could argue the conditions are perfect. I think it's a little bit too hot. We've been hearing rumours, Richard, that the humidity is going to be up around 90%. So local time, we're not too far away from, what, 9:30 in the morning. It's pretty warm. And, you know, I wonder whether that could be a factor towards the end of the race. But a bearer the favourite. And Zane Robertson, I love optimism and I love confidence. He wants Rod Dixon's national record, which for the statisticians among you, is 2:08.53. Now, we know he's gone inside 60 minutes, Richard, for the half. He wants 2:07. Is that a bit ambitious for his first marathon?
Well, he is a sub-60-minute half-marathon performer, so a time under 2:07 is within his grasp, but of course today is his debut at the marathon, and a lot of things can happen in your first marathon. So if he gets, well, I think if he goes under the New Zealand record, Rod Dixon's record, which has stood for over 30 years, that will be already a major achievement. But it's great to have a top Kiwi athlete in the mix with the top Kenyans and Ethiopians. And there's Tesfaye Abada, the fastest athlete in the field, being introduced to the crowd. But Rob, I just want to come back to your point about how warm it is. There's Abdi Nagea, Holland's top athlete. He ran his personal best in Rotterdam earlier this year, 2:09.34, the first time going under 2 hours and 10 minutes. Finished 11th in Rio in the Olympic marathon last year, and today he is going to attempt to set a new Dutch national marathon record, which currently stands to Camille Marcer, 2:08.21. Deputy Mayor of Amsterdam, Erik van der Burg, standing alongside the Benelux director from TCS, Amir Kapoor. So the start of the 2017 TCS Amsterdam Marathon. Yes, Rob, just another point about how warm it is. As you said, 3 years ago we had very humid conditions, and that did have an effect on the finishing times. And I just wonder if the heat and also the humidity is going to have an effect on the results today.
Well, it might do, I guess. We'll only find out over the next thoroughly absorbing 2 hours and 8 minutes or 7 minutes in the case of the men, and maybe the low 2:20s for the women. But it's a great field in this men's race, Richard, and as we discussed before the race, before they started lining up, it's that classic mix of youth and experience.
It is, and we've got six runners who have run under 2 hours and 6 minutes. Remember the course record, 2:05:20. So the race organisers have set up rabbits to take the leaders through halfway on course record tempo, which will be going through the halfway point in around 62 minutes and 40 seconds if they're going to have any serious attempt on Amsterdam's course record. Quite unusual in many ways for a big city marathon to start inside a stadium. Many of the famous big city marathons around the world, London, Berlin, New York, Boston, starting out on the streets, but Amsterdam actually chooses to start the race from inside the famous Olympic Stadium. Well, you can see those pacemakers at the front wearing 80 and 81 and 98. Those are the 3 Kenyan athletes who've been designated to set the pace for the leading athletes in the men's race. And we've also got pacemakers who will be doing a similar job in the women's race. And we'll be following the women's race. There's the top Ethiopian, Tadalech Bekele, F3. And we'll be keeping an eye on both the men's and the women's races over the next couple of hours. Well, as we were looking at the course map a few minutes ago, the course heads out through Vondel Park and returns on the same stretch of tarmac back into the stadium in another 40 kilometers from now. But what's nice for the athletes as they head out from the stadium is the support that they're getting from the spectators here in the stadium. The spectators have come to watch the marathon as well as the other races taking place later today. And right now, the runners and spectators are being reminded of the contribution to this race from one of the great mayors of Amsterdam, Eberhard van der Laan, who was mayor here in the city of Amsterdam for 7 years until his death just 10 days ago after a very long fight with lung cancer. Eberhard was a massive fan of this race. And so the runners as well as the spectators here giving their applause and showing their affection for one of the city's most popular mayors, Eberhard van der Laan. There's a picture of Eberhard with number 1. He was a great lover of this race, which has become so big and so popular in recent years during his time as mayor. And it was very interesting to hear that in late September, just a couple of weeks before his death, when he stepped down from being mayor, around 30,000 people, Rob, went to his home and applauded, stood outside his home and applauded him for his contribution to the city.
That's absolutely incredible. Well, it's obviously a raw time for him and his family. And hopefully, on his behalf, they can take some comfort from a wonderful advert for the city that he was such a good servant for so many years. The marathon, a big part of the international appeal of Amsterdam. Yes, it's a huge place culturally and architecturally and for all its art and music. But every year, the eyes of the distance running world descend on the very best who are here to try and win what is, without doubt, one of the world's most prestigious marathons. pacemakers doing a good job. 80 is, I mentioned him just before the start, just on the left there, Albert Kangogo, 59.25 in Copenhagen. And Sami Kitwara, 81. Kitwara, by the way, is a 2:04.28 marathon runner. He paced Boston and Berlin this year. So not only have we got a classy elite field finishing the race, Richard, there's absolute top quality in the men whose responsibility it is to see us through halfway in 62.40. So, you know what, just a shade over 2:05. And that's ambitious because only Abera, the very tall Ethiopian wearing number 2, only he has gone quicker than 2:05. So, you know, they're not hanging around. They're going for this, and obviously the real drama will unfold towards the second half of the race. Abera, by the way, is just behind the line of pacemakers. He's wearing a white vest. As we look at F3, that's Caroline Rotic. Just behind her is Tedalec Bekele, and there is Bekele, 2:22.23. She's a class athlete, Richard. Twice 4th in Berlin, 5 half marathons under 70 minutes. You know, she's 26. You can argue she's coming towards the peak of her career.
Yes, it's another youth against experience contest in the women's race. Caroline Rotic has run so many marathons over the last 11 years. She debuted in 2006, whereas, as you say, Rob, Tadalec Bekele has really only been competing at top level for the last 5 years. And we'll mention another new debutante in the women's race in a few minutes. We're now back at the front of the men's race. You mentioned about the pacemakers, Rob, being a feature of big city marathons, and not only pacemakers but very, very fast pacemakers, because you've got to be able to run world-class times over the half marathon to be able to run and lead runners at this pace. There's Abdi Nagea. Well, we've seen Abdi here in Amsterdam a few times. 2 years ago, he ran his Olympic qualifying when he ran 2 hours, 10 minutes and 24 seconds. Since then, he's lowered his best time to under 2 hours and 10 minutes in Rotterdam earlier this year. And as we mentioned earlier, he's got an eye on the Dutch national record of 2 hours, 8 minutes and 21 seconds. Interestingly, Rob, Abdi trains with Eliud Kipchoge in Kapsabet. So although Somali by birth, is now based in Kenya.
Well, and he couldn't be in a better training group right now, could he? I mean, we could have the debate. It's always contentious who's the greatest of all time, and it might sound a bit disrespectful to the likes of Sierpinski, who's a double Olympic champion, but and Abdi Bekele, who won the marathon for Ethiopia in 60 and 64. But I think you could argue Eliud Kipchoge, who Abdi trains with, is the greatest of all time, because he's just not had a bad marathon. So he's in a great training group under the tutelage of Patrick Sang. Stephen Chebogut there, 2:05.52 when he won Eindhoven a couple of years ago. He's only raced once this year, Richard. We talked about him before we came on air. He ran his second fastest time, 2:06.57, for second in Paris, and I was there commentating on that race. So he's in form, Chebogut, and he's fresh. Now, although he's 32, so he's one of the older guys in the field, you know, if he's continued that good form that he displayed in Paris in the spring, he could definitely get alongside and challenge the likes of Abera.
Yes, and he's also got a big marathon victory in Holland under his belt. He ran his personal best in Eindhoven, which is one of Holland's big 3 marathons, which takes place always just 1 week before Amsterdam. He won in Eindhoven 2 years ago, but this year has chosen to come here to Amsterdam. And there's a nice shot of Wilson Chebet, who is competing here in Amsterdam, incredibly, for an 8th consecutive year. Was second in Amsterdam in 2010, and then won for the first time in Amsterdam the following year, 2011, which was the start of 3 consecutive wins for Wilson Chebet. And that's why, Rob, you were referring to him as Mr. Amsterdam. Well, whether Wilson Chibet can win for a 4th time. That might be a bit of a tall order in today's race. But as you mentioned, Tesfaye Abada, the fastest Ethiopian in the field and definitely one of the favourites. And we did hear from Gitani Tessema, his coach, that Gitani really does believe that Tesfaye is over some of the problems that have affected his performances earlier this year. There's another young Ethiopian, Mule Wasihun, also in Gitani Tessema's training group, just 23 years of age, but another of the athletes who's gone under 2 hours and 6 minutes and was second in Dubai earlier this year.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Wasihun, if you look at his record in Dubai, not so much focusing on the times, but on the position in which he's finished in those races, he's gone 11th, 5th and 2nd. A 9th here last year in 2:07.19. So he's, you know, you can argue he's 23, he's world class, he's still learning his craft at the marathon, and he's definitely heading in the right direction in terms of his progress in Dubai. Interesting to see whether he can replicate that. And actually Wasihun ran really well in the world half last year in Cardiff in brutal conditions, finishing inside the top 10, as we now get a glimpse once again of the leading women. And Bekele just ahead there of Caroline Rotich. And it's a beautiful morning, Richard, isn't it? Absolutely stunning, but it is hot.
It is hot, and the runners have just reached the famous Rijksmuseum at around the 4-kilometre point. This is one of the few parts of the course where they'll be in the shade, because the course actually goes underneath the famous art museum, which is one of the reasons why millions of visitors flock to the city every year. And as we mentioned earlier, the runners will come back past the Rijksmuseum in the latter stages of the race. This was a change to the course here in Amsterdam a few years ago, when the organisers decided to take the course and the runners underneath the famous landmark of the Rijksmuseum. And meanwhile, back in the stadium, some of the 16,000 marathon participants are just leaving the stadium at the start of their 42-kilometre journey.
It's amazing, isn't it, Richard, when you have so many people taking part, and it is wonderful that everyone has the opportunity to start in the Olympic Stadium, a real moment of history. Even if you're going to run 4.5 hours, you can appreciate the setting and the context every bit as much as the guys who have almost run 3 miles, whilst the best of the rest are still going across the start line. But yeah, just another unique feature and another reason why this race continues to flourish well into its 4th decade of existence. 1975,
and also some great winners, Rob, over the years. You think of Bill Rogers from the United States. He's been a winner here. The great Belgian marathon runner Karel Lismont won here in 1976. He was a European marathon champion 1971, and of course, coming more recently, we can think of great names such as Haile Gebrselassie, the Ethiopian female Olympic champion Tiki Gilana has been here, as well as the Dutch national marathon record holder Lorna Kiplagat. So some great names have run here in Amsterdam over the past 42 years, and we're really excited to find out who's going to be the new champion. I say the new champion because the champion from last year, Daniel Wanjiru, is not here in Amsterdam. He moved on from Amsterdam from winning here last year and took part in the London Marathon, and then went to the World Championships and couldn't maintain his winning streak in the World Championships in August. So we're looking for a new champion, unless of course Wilson Chibet can surprise us all and claim his 4th marathon title here in Amsterdam, although I think we'd say that is quite unlikely, because Wilson Chibet, despite his amazing performances here in Amsterdam between 2011 and 2013, has had a rather tough time of it in recent years.
He has. If you look at his record, so, you know, there we go. So 15 on the nose, so 2:06 plus change. So, you know, it's a nice steady start. It's slightly outside, just a fraction outside the 62:40 schedule, but I'm sure they'll pick it up. Yeah, with Chebet, he wins in 11, 12 and 13, doesn't finish 2014, was 5th 2 years ago and 12th last year, and was 5th in Boston earlier this year. So we mustn't show him any disrespect. He's a 2:05.27 man at his best, but he has got a lot of younger, very talented men that he's up against here in his battle to become a quadruple champion in Amsterdam. You would definitely still put a bearer down as the favourite.
Well, this is interesting. This is the second group behind the leaders. You can see the pacemakers, the two Dutch runners, 83 and 85. 83 is Michel Butter, one of Holland's top marathon runners, who's doing the pacemaking for the second group. As we just see the run-through of the leaders, Edwin Kiptoo running his debut here in Amsterdam. Sami Kutuara, one of the pacemakers, as is Edwin Koech. Bonsadida, a very interesting participant. He's run here in Amsterdam a few times. So a very large leading group of around 20 athletes. Ruben Lima, a 30-year-old Kenyan, also here running his debut. So we will expect that leading group of around 20 athletes to be whittled down to a much smaller group by the second half of the race. But this is the second group, and this is where Zane Robertson has decided to position himself alongside Abdi Nagea. So they're operating at a slightly slower tempo than the leaders. See the yellow shorts of the Dutch marathon runner Michel Butter doing the pacing for that second group. Nagea aiming for a time around 2 hours and 8 minutes, so we'll be aiming to go through halfway about a minute and a half down on the leading group, going through halfway in around 64:20. But we're now back with the leaders, which is now just Kenyan and Ethiopian athletes.
And just a quick note on Zane Robertson, Richard. I'm really pleased that he's decided to be a little bit conservative in the first half of the race. I think he's an exciting talent. I think both those brothers, him and his twin Jake, have been really gutsy moving over to Kenya with absolutely nothing. It's not like they were two rich kids from the other side of the world. They went down there and did it the hard way. And, you know, that determination to make it is really admirable. So I'm really hoping he runs well. And I think it is good that he's just respecting the distance and giving himself a chance to make up ground in the second half of the race. No problem going through halfway a minute behind these guys. If he then feels good, as you know, having come 5th in Atlanta all those years ago. Sorry for bringing it up, 21 years ago, but it was a great run. So close to a medal. And there is Zane in the middle there, number 15. If he is feeling good towards the business end of the second half of the race, there's no reason why he can't come through and finish very high up this field.
Yes, and I think you're right, Rob, to say he's running sensibly. I mean, it would be a little bit suicidal, not only to start at the pace of the leaders, but particularly in your first marathon, when you're experiencing the 42 kilometres in a race situation for the first time. As you say, it's an amazing story, Zane Robertson, leaving home at the age of 17 with his twin brother and deciding not just to base himself in Kenya, but to live in Kenya and really dedicate himself to his trade. And what success the twins have had. I mean, we saw just last month in the Great North Run, his twin brother Jake finished second behind Mo in a time of just under the hour, and Zane himself put in a pretty decent performance in his build-up to this race. 61:42 he ran for the half marathon just 5 weeks ago on Tyneside. Well, that's the second group. They've got 3 pacemakers on the right there. number 85, Khalid Shugud. He himself is a good marathon runner. He actually won the Dutch marathon title here in Amsterdam a year ago, but this year, 2017, he's decided to concentrate on the shorter distances, just around 5k and 10k. He'll be running a number of cross-country races through the winter and is likely to return to the marathon distance in 2018. So that second group with Abdi Nagaya and Zane Robertson have got some pretty reliable pacemakers in the likes of Michel Butter and Khalid Shugud, who are both competed here in Amsterdam. Interestingly, Rob, Michel Butter, who has competed in Amsterdam 3 times, said earlier this week that the reason he's decided not to compete here is just to have a break from Amsterdam and Rotterdam. 3 Amsterdam marathons, 3 Rotterdam marathons in his 9-marathon career, and this year, in a month's time, he'll start his first New York Marathon.
Oh, brilliant, and I'm sure he'll really enjoy that. He's a classy athlete, Butter, 9th in the European Cross a few years ago. He's had 2:11 and finished 13th in Rotterdam, so, you know, he's been there or thereabouts, so more than equipped to do some pacemaking. And actually, and there's Zane Robertson just towards the right, talking about Butter, perfect build-up to New York, really, if he drops out at 25k, but what about Abdi Nagaya's quest, 2:08.21. Now, I know he's had a really good PB 2:09.5 in Rotterdam. He's got to drop over a minute, Richard. That's a huge amount of time. But if he's going to do it anywhere, maybe he can be inspired by his new adopted home crowd and home fans.
Yes, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, Rob? I think every athlete goes into this race with probably a realistic goal and then a dream goal. And I think in Nagaya's case, his dream goal would be the Dutch marathon record of 2 hours, 8 minutes and 21 seconds. Probably, as you say, a more realistic goal is just to improve his personal best time. I say just because they're operating at a very fast pace. His best time of 2 hours, 9 minutes and 34 seconds is already a world-class time. And if he can just get under 2 hours and 9 minutes, that will be another very big step forward in his career. And let's remember, he's only 28 years old. Ran his debut marathon just 3 years ago in Enschede when he started with a 2 hours 11 minutes. So in 3 years he's already improved his best time by 2 minutes, and if he was to look ahead another 3 years up to the next Olympic Games, well then he might be looking to be performing at the 2:06 level. But Abdi Nagaya, another great story, originally from Somalia, left Somalia as a 4-year-old and has come to Holland, taken Dutch citizenship, but as we mentioned earlier, has chosen to do most of his training in one of the world's top training groups led by Eliud Kipchoge.
Yeah, and what a group that is to be a part of. Eliud Kipchoge, well, we were expecting fireworks in Berlin last month, but the weather put pay to that. A great victory, but not the time he was necessarily expecting. And I wonder what fireworks we'll get here in the magnificent city of Amsterdam for this 42nd edition. Tesfaye Abera, the really tall Ethiopian, who's by far the quickest in the field on paper, Richard, quite happy just to sit in behind the pacemakers. He's instantly identifiable because he's so tall. He's huge for an Ethiopian, actually. You know, uncharacteristically tall. You've lived there for a long time. There wouldn't be many Ethiopian men who are that far above 6 foot.
He's quite distinctive, isn't he? And I mean, I think it's obviously very important that they've got pacemakers. There's another debutant in the marathon, Ruben Lima, managed by Michel Botang, has been running half marathons and shorter distances for many years, but now today wanted to try the marathon for the first time at quite a late stage in his career, but already actually struggling to stay with the leaders. But just coming back to the pacemakers, Rob, sitting here in the commentary studio, it's hard for us to actually get a feel for what it's like out on the road, but there is a slight wind from the south, and that's where the pacemakers will really be useful for the runners, because in about 10 minutes time the runners will be down on the banks of the River Amstel, and if they are going to feel any breeze, it's going to be in that out stretch going out towards the halfway point at Ouderkerk. And so the likes of Tesfaye Ebere and the other leading athletes will want to take as much shelter as they can from the three pacemakers. We're expecting the three pacemakers to stay in the race at least until halfway, with one or two of them trying to go up to 25 or even 30k. So a slight southerly wind or breeze, let's say, which will mean that, if anything, the second half of the race could be a little bit faster because they turn at Ouderkerk and then they head back north into the business district and then back into the main sightseeing area of town. There's the second group again, being led by Butter and Chukut. So already with 25, 26 minutes on the clock, the leaders are probably about a half a minute up on that second group, as we'd expect, because this leading group of around 15, 20 top Kenyan and Ethiopian athletes, they're aiming to go through halfway in just over 62.5 minutes.
Yeah, they were a shade outside that for the first 5k, but that's just a question of settling down, I guess. One interesting athlete in that group, Richard, was a pacemaker last year up until 33k. He's wearing number 16. We might get a glimpse of him when they go back to the leaders, and that's the glimpse on the left-hand side. Those who took a little while to get across the start line are already some way behind. It's an awe-inspiring sight if you're a club runner and fun runner and you're on one of these out and back courses, because you can look across to the other side, and then when you're running in the same race but miles behind, you do get a really good impression of just how fast the athletes are. But Edwin Kiptu has won the Dam to Dam a couple of times, only started running in 2012. He's a 59.26 half marathon runner, and he's right up there with that group. And we haven't really spoken much about him, so we'll have to keep our eye on him. Yes, he's a debutant, and it's one thing running 59 plus change. You've got to do it twice, back to back. But he was right there next to the pacemakers.
Yes, I think the interesting thing about Kiptu is that he's, as you said, done a couple of pacemaking duties at these big city marathons, including the race here last year, and then went on to do some pacemaking in Dubai. So that's in many ways where these top marathon runners learn their trade. They actually experience what it's like going up to 30k, and Kiptu has decided this is the time at age 24 when he wants to try the full distance for the first time.
And there he is, number 16. If we look to the left-hand side of picture, he's third from the right-hand side in that group, now just being shaded by one of the pacemakers. But long, long way to go.
And Rob, you were mentioning about the runners crisscrossing, and that's because this part of the marathon route was added, actually. There was a change in the route a few years ago to move the course away from some of the more exposed parts of the course down on the Amstel River, and they added this loop in around a more sheltered part of the course. So race organisers always looking for ways to make the course quicker, and as you said, it has the added benefit for some of the runners to see the elite runners on the other side.
I think that's one of the great and unique features about running a marathon, Richard. I can't think of too many contexts where, in a funny kind of way, although metaphorically they're in separate races because they're running at such different paces, you're competing on the same course at the same time on the same day as the very best in the world. There aren't many sports that can offer that.
That's right, and you know, so often you hear stories of people telling you when they've run their marathons, and they'll say, and that was the year that Gebre Selassie won, or that was the year that Paula Radcliffe won. And I think it is a great thing to say that you were in the race when those great champions were also taking part and winning.
So what was that? 29.54 for the 10. So it's still it's around about 2:06. So it's a fraction outside their predicted pace, but yeah, these guys are genuinely world class. These pacemakers. We've mentioned already, Kitwara is a 2:04.28 man. Well, he's in the world's top 20. So you know it's good going for these guys, and I'm sure they might pick up the pace between now and halfway. And as you indicated, Richard, that gap was around about what 30-35 seconds back to Robertson. Sensible running by the guys in that second group. 2:07, 2:08. You've mentioned Chakoud, who was 14th the last 2 years here, and 83 Butter, who's getting ready for New York. There's Robertson just in the background. And 19 as well is Abdi Nagay, still there, still trying to make sure he puts himself in pole position for that Dutch national record of 2:08.21.
Well, yes, and it is interesting that Zane Robertson, the New Zealand athlete in the middle of that group, has decided to hang back in many ways, because we know that those pacers, led by Michel Butter, are operating at around a 2:08 tempo, and yet Zane Robertson himself said the goal in coming to Amsterdam was to run a time in under 2:07. So if he's to do that, he's going to have to run a negative split, but that is in many ways the way to run, and particularly in your debut, to start off a little bit cautiously and then to move through in the second half. But back with the leaders, and that front group of around 17, 18 athletes. Norbert Keegan, we haven't mentioned him, another world-class performer, the best time of 2 hours, 6 minutes and 7 seconds. But you mentioned, Rob, about the pace that they're running at the moment. They're operating at around 2:06 pace, which is just outside course record pace. But we have to remember that although we said that there's 6 athletes in the field who have run under 2 hours and 6 for the marathon, there are around 10 in this group who haven't. So you'd have to say that either some of them are taking a risk, or they're wanting to have Amsterdam as the place where they move up one more step in their great marathon career. Well, that's one athlete who is struggling a little bit. Yeah, Limas, he's in that really awkward position, Richard. He's a decent athlete, 3rd in the Berlin half this year. He's gone 61.43, 27th in the Kenyan National Cross. He's the one athlete completely isolated between the lead group and the chase group. So he's running okay on his debut, but you've been there at the highest level. That's hard to be isolated only 6 miles into the race. You've got that decision to make. Do you actively drop back and accept the fact that it's going to be a slower first half than you like, or do you work your socks off to rejoin the lead group? What's your tactic if you find yourself in no man's land, as Lima is at the moment? Well, I suppose with hindsight he'll say he's already made a mistake, because in some ways he's committed himself too early, and you know, we make that comparison with somebody like Zane Robertson, who's started more cautiously, and it's obviously much nicer to be sitting in a group. There's Laban Correa, who is again one of the favourites, finished 4th here last year in his personal best time, 2 hours 5 minutes and 54 seconds, and was 2nd here 6 years ago when Wilson Chebet won. So Laban Correa, he's in that group. We will expect him to feature in the closing stages of the race. But it is, as you say, Rob, it's a bit of a gamble. I mean, do you go with the leaders and in many ways you take that risk, or do you hang back? Of course, the problem if you hang back is that you might be able to move through, but whether you'll be able to move through enough to actually win the race. So I think if you've got serious ambitions to win this race, then obviously you have to take that gamble and go with the leaders, because we'll probably see by halfway the leaders are going to be more than a minute up on that second group. If you're here to run a fast time. Zane Robertson, I think, has got his goals set more on running a decent first-time marathon, then it's probably better to be cautious. There's his intermediate time, 30:24. So that's a really good opening 10 kilometres for Zane Robertson.
Yeah, really good. So he's on course for about 2:08, and bearing in mind that Dixon's course record is 2:08:53. Dixon's national record, I should have said. He's going very well at the moment, and there's no reason why he can't pick up some further time and get down towards his desired first marathon time of 2:07. But there's such a long way to go.
Well, number 81 on the left of your screen, Sami Khedwala, he was second here in Amsterdam. As Rob was saying, he's made his name in many of the world's big city marathons. Has finished second in Chicago a couple of times. A personal best time of 2:04:24. And interestingly, Sami Khedwala, one of the pacemakers, is a training partner of Edwin Kiptoo, who is making his debut, number 16. So number 16 just behind the first line of those three pacemakers. Edwin Kiptoo trains with Sami Khedwala in Kapsabet in Kenya.
Luka Rotic just towards the back of that group on the right-hand side. Won Ottawa a few years ago. He's a 60:13 man for the half marathon. There's real quality all throughout this lead group. And those side-on angles do give you a much better impression as to how fast these guys are running. If you're watching this and you like knocking out the odd 5K wherever in the world you happen to live or run, this for most of us would be not too far off a flat-out sprint. Most reasonably fit club athletes would be struggling to keep up with these guys for more than 800 metres or a mile at most. It's extraordinary, isn't it, really?
Well, as you said, Rob, I mean, Zane Robertson, who is there half a minute, if not more, off the leaders, he went through 10K in 30 minutes and 24 seconds. Well, that would win you many 10K races around the world. So there, the passport of Wilson Chebet, a three-time winner here in Amsterdam, trying to emulate the great Dutch marathon runner Gerhard Nijboer, who has won 4 Amsterdam marathons in the 1980s. 3 other athletes have run in Amsterdam twice. Can Wilson Chebet win a 4th Amsterdam title, which would equal the great Gerhard Nijboer? Well, Rob, I think that's going to be a bit of a tall order for Chebet.
Yeah, that's a huge target. I mean, yes, he's world class, but those 3 great performances came a long time ago, 2011, 12 and 13. 6th in the world half. That's his only international appearance for Kenya. And it's ludicrous, really, when you think you've got a guy who's won 4 major marathons, 3 times Amsterdam, once Rotterdam, but such is the strength in depth in Kenyan distance running, he's only got 1 official international vest for Kenya, and that was 8 years ago. It's crazy, isn't it, how good you have to be in Kenya to don that very distinctive, famous vest in international competition.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing how marathon running has moved on in recent years. I mean, Chebet has a best time of 2 hours, 5 minutes and 27 seconds. The world record now is 2 hours, 2 minutes and 57 seconds. So 7 athletes, 6 of them Kenyan, have run under 2 hours, 3 minutes and 15 seconds. So, as you say, Chebet, one of the world's best, and yet still some way off being one of Kenyan's best, and therefore with relatively few international appearances for his country.
Well, he's a proud man, and he'll hope to be, if not winning, then certainly in the mix until the very last stages of this race. But I tell you what, Richard, Sefe Abera looks really cool and comfortable behind the three pacemakers, the big distinctive guy in the white vest. Everyone runs differently in a pack. You can see him there. He's just, you've got the line of the three pacemakers in the blue, and he's the tall figure now just towards the middle of your screen. He hasn't been content to be at the back of that pack. At every stage, every step of the 40 minutes we've watched and enjoyed so far, he's been the one right there behind them. Now, maybe we're making more of that than we should, but it shows you his intent and his confidence and his determination to boss that lead group.
Yes, Rob, I mean, I'm also going on what his coach has been telling us also in the last couple of days, that Sefe Abera has come into this race in really good shape. And I think, as we mentioned earlier, he's had one or two problems in recent months in his recent races. And it'll be really interesting to see if he can get back to his best, which he showed in Dubai at the start of 2016.
Number 5, just towards the back of that group, was Steven Chebogat. Remember, winner of Eindhoven, he's won Istanbul, Kilimanjaro, and was second in Paris with the second fastest time of his career earlier this year. He's only raced once in 2017, so he should be feeling relatively fresh. The city is shining its finest colours in this beautiful early autumn Sunday morning. Just a great place to come and visit, let alone come and run 26.2.
And this is a lovely stretch of the course. They're just short of 14 kilometres down on the banks of the Amstel River. They'll pass a number of windmills as they head out to the famous village of Ouderkerk, Old Church, for the turnaround just short of 20 kilometres. Amos Kipruto, another of the favourites. Very interesting athlete, has run 3 marathons with 2 victories already under his belt. One from Seoul earlier this year where he ran his best time, and his other victory coming in Rome 18 months ago. So Kipruto, one of the younger athletes. It's interesting, Rob, we've got a bit of a youth-free experience in both the men's and women's races, and Kipruto, one of the younger athletes in the men's lineup, just 25 years of age, whereas a few of the Kenyans, his compatriots, including Chebet and Steven Chebogat, in their 30s.
I think Kipruto's definitely one to watch. I think he feels he's got a point to prove here, having won Seoul in a PB and won Rome, 13th here last year because he was ill. So he's only run 3 marathons, and as you said, he's won 2 of them. And also, Richard, he's made the podium in 4 of the 5 half marathons that he's run, and he lowered his lifetime best for the half to 60.24. Now, I know it's not the fireworks of a 59.5, but he generally runs very well. He's really consistent, and he's in PB shape over the half and the full marathon. He could definitely be one to watch.
Yes, and I was reading earlier, Rob, that Kipruto is one of those athletes who would call himself a student of the sport. Apparently, he spends some of his spare time watching videos of great races of the past, you know. So he idolises Sami Wanjiru and Haile Gebrselassie. So I think not only is he a consistent performer, but I think he's thought very carefully about the best approach to marathon training and competition, and that's clearly borne fruit in his results.
And that's different, isn't it? I mean, you've lived in Ethiopia for the best part of a decade. I know you're back in the UK now, but some East African athletes run purely from instinct, and their talent and the way they construct their training is so raw. So that's interesting that Kipruto takes such a careful and measured approach to how he puts his training together.
Yes, I think you're right. It is probably a little bit different from how the majority of African athletes learn their trade. I mean, I think we assume that a lot of young athletes coming through to marathon running will simply learn how to to train for the marathon from being part of these very big training groups that are led by the senior athletes who have already competed in many of the big city marathons, which I think is the case. But you know, to also to learn from watching great races and how other great athletes have gone about their training is interesting. Well, there's a great scene of the flyboarders out on the Amstel River. It's a scene that we see regularly here, and a very special feature of Amsterdam, this great river which is used for many big rowing competitions. But on the day of the marathon, the flyboarders, as they're called, love to come out and give encouragement to the runners.
That is crazy. I have seen it before, but never during a big city marathon. I bet that's a lot harder than it looks. You must need a superb sense of balance to do that.
Yeah, well, you've probably seen stilts in other big city marathons, haven't you, Rob? Well, this is like stilts on water.
Wow, that's amazing. There's a first for everything. Would you fancy? How much would I have to pay you to have a go at that before we go to the airport and fly home?
It's a wonder they haven't got a GoPro camera on.
Notice he hasn't answered that question. I think the answer is a lot of money. Anyway, so yeah, just yet another one of the unique features of this great race. 27 is Sergej Moller making his debut, just coming off the back, a couple of meters off the back of the chase group. Very easily identifiable with Zane Robertson right in the middle of that group. The lead motorbike there, which always precedes the leading group.
So the leaders through 15k, still a very large group. There's one of the windmills that the leaders are passing on the stretch on the north side of the Amstel River. You can see that leading group still around 20 athletes. Very, very strong group. 3 pacemakers, led by number 81, Sami Kitwara. And we'll be expecting that group to be whittled down to less than half that number by the closing stages of the race. So there's 98, Edwin Koech, one of the 3 pacemakers. Well, interestingly, Rob, we were talking about Ruben Lima, the Kenyan, who at 10 kilometres was dropping off the leading group. It looks to me as though he's fought his way back onto one of the groups, but actually, now I'm looking more closely, it might be that yeah, that's right, he's actually become part of that second group. Number 25 in the middle of your screen is now at the back of the chase group, which has Zane Robertson, and just in front of him, the much smaller figure of Abdi Nagea.
That would make sense, wouldn't it? Because Lima was becoming detached from the lead group. Hopefully, as he makes his debut, he can get some confidence back in that chase group and maybe get a little bit of encouragement from being part of a bigger pack as opposed to running solo, completely isolated between the 2 groups. But still, he's having an interesting debut.
Well, we talked about Tjugut winning the Dutch marathon title here in Amsterdam last year. So the Dutch Marathon Championship rotates between Holland's big 3 marathons of Rotterdam, Eindhoven and Amsterdam. Amsterdam has got the National Marathon Championship for 3 years, starting last year in 2016 and continuing through to next year. So we're going to see a Dutch marathon champion here in Amsterdam. Quite interesting, the competition between Holland's big 3 marathons, Rotterdam, Amsterdam and Eindhoven. I think if we were to look back over the last 20 years, we'd probably say that Rotterdam is the fastest of those 3. it's actually got the 10 fastest times for marathons run in Holland. But actually, if you just look over the last couple of years, you would say that Amsterdam in many ways has taken over as Holland's fastest marathon, because in recent years Amsterdam has had winning times of under 2 hours and 6 minutes, whereas the winning time in Rotterdam in the recent years has slipped to a little bit slower. So very interesting that Holland has these 3 big marathons, one in April in Rotterdam and then 2 in October, with the Amsterdam Marathon coming 1 week after the Eindhoven Marathon, which took place last year, which produced a winning time of 2 hours, 6 minutes and 21 seconds. So a lot of competition between the 3 cities as to who's going to come out on top, and that's no doubt why the organisers today will be hoping for a fast time so that they can stay on top of the marathon tree in Holland.
Yeah, well, as you said, 5 of the last 7 have been won in 2:05 plus change. That's a seriously good record for this event. It really is. And they're on course at the moment. They were around about 2:06, but now at the 15k marker, they were on course to once again continue that trend of sub 2:06 winning times. But 16, we mentioned him already, Edwin Kiptoo, alongside a bearer, such a tall figure, but just about everybody we would have expected to be in that lead group is still there. So nobody's become a big casualty so far. Yes, we've lost Lima, but remember, Lima's a debutant, and unusual debutant for Kenyan distance runners, making his first marathon at the age of 32, but everybody else is still there. And I think they're probably quite happy, Richard, to sit in behind the pacemakers and one by one, once we get through halfway and maybe we get to 25, a few will drop off, and then 30k seems to be the point at which groups really disintegrate, and the latest it seems to unravel is 35k. That's where the real damage is done in the last 6 miles.
Yes, I think in the last couple of years we've seen the race really open up over the last 5-7 kilometres, as you say, and at 37 kilometres I think they cross the bridge over the Amstel River and head back towards Vondel Park. And I remember last year watching Daniel Wanjiru run away from the champion from 2015, Bernard Kipyego, and Sami Kitwara, and put in an incredibly fast last 2 kilometres through Vondel Park. So marathon running at this level, it's all about how fast and how strong you can finish over those last 5 kilometres. I mean, just last week watching Galen Rupp in Chicago, he ran an incredibly fast 2 kilometres. I think it was 6 minutes and 8 seconds for his last 2.11k, which one of the fastest ever finishing splits. And I think at this level, it is all about finishing speed over the 42 kilometres.
That was a brilliant win for Rupp. When you think he's won medals at 10,000 metres in London, and then how well did he run last year in Rio, by the way, to come through for a podium finish. So the Americans are beginning to put their mark on the top of the sports leaderboard at the Olympics and at the big city marathons. I know he'll have a huge amount of supporters over there in the States. A massive win for Rupp, it really was. And as you said, an explosive piece of acceleration towards the end of the marathon.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, Rob, how people come to the marathon. Some of these top Kenyan and Ethiopian runners are out-and-out marathon runners, but some of them actually do take the more traditional route of starting out as a track runner, running cross-country, and then moving up through the distances, 10k and half marathon. We've got 1 or 2 athletes of that type in today's race, including the young Ethiopian Mule Wasahu, who's come from a track background, has run 5,000 and 10,000 metres, won national titles on the track, and then has moved on to marathon running, whereas some of the runners just go immediately to the road and immediately to the half marathon and then quickly move up to the full marathon distance. But as I think you've indicated, if you're going to compete at this level, you've got to have incredible speed to close the race if you're looking to win any of these big races.
Yeah, and I don't know about you. I mean, anyone who runs a 2:05 or a 2:06 is worthy of admiration, but you tend to feel that if there was a head-to-head scenario between an athlete who had just purely only ever been a road runner at half marathons, and the guy alongside him has got years and years of 5 and 10K on the track in his legs and all the speed rep sessions that he would have done, if it was toe-to-toe, you know, you'd fancy that extra little bit of experience and historical speed from the track might see the former track athlete through.
That's right, yeah. And then we've seen that in many ways, haven't we, with Eliud Kipchoge, as you say, probably now regarded as the great marathon runner of all time, just from his record in the last 3 or 4 years. Number 14 just flashed up on the screen, another interesting debutant, Mishak Koech, the younger brother of the well-known Emmanuel Mutai. So he's taking a bit of a risk in his first marathon, gone with that leading group.
Clearly feels good. Bonsa Dida still there as well, Richard. Now, I know his PB's only 2:10.16, set when he won Madrid this year, but he's improved really nicely. 2:12, then he's gone high, mid to high 2:11s, 2:10.16. Brilliant cross-country runner, only just missed a medal in Punta Umbria back in 2011 and was 10th at the World Cross in the brilliant but boiling hot conditions of Kampala at the end of March. I was there for that. Dida is a really, really good athlete if he can just hang in there and be in the mix towards the end.
Yeah, that's number 47, Bonsa Dida, and interestingly, he's come to Amsterdam before. He's competed here. Actually, we expected him to compete at a very high level when we saw him here in Amsterdam last time, but didn't produce the goods then. But whether he can do it today, that will be interesting. His best time is actually relatively slow, isn't it, for the company that he's keeping at the moment? Just 2 hours, 10 minutes and 16 seconds.
Yeah, he's certainly on course to smash that if he can stay in touch with this lead group towards the business end of the race. Pretty much everybody's still there. Beautiful course, this.
Well, there we're getting a glimpse of the turnaround at Ouderkerk. If you're a local, you will know the historical significance of this very old village called Old Church, or Ouderkerk in Dutch. And this is where the runners will cross the bridge and head down to the south bank of the river and then turn and head north back towards the halfway point. So just short of 20 kilometres at the turnaround point. And as we mentioned earlier, if they are feeling any of the breeze this morning, then it should be on their backs as they head north, because it's a slight southerly breeze. And it will be interesting to see their halfway split in a few minutes' time. They stay on the banks of the river for another, well, just under 15 minutes before heading up towards the business district, but still a very, very large group of Kenyan athletes. We mentioned a few Ethiopians, but here in Amsterdam, it's been the Kenyans who've been winning the men's title for the last so many years. I think it was Getu Feleka was the last Ethiopian to win here in Amsterdam in 2010. So whether Tesfaye Abada or Mule Wasahun can break that Kenyan dominance, we will see. There's the second group. They've just crossed over the bridge back onto the south bank, and we're back now with the leaders. Number 6, Laban Correa, who's got plenty of experience of Amsterdam, having run here last year and also 6 years ago in 2011. There's the 20k point, just under the hour. So they're still operating at 2:06 pace, I think, just outside course record pace, but in some ways that's what we expected, that they would run a slightly slower first half because of that southerly breeze.
Also, I think that's quite sensible, Richard, on behalf of the pacemakers. Sami Kitwara there, 81. You know, there are quite a few guys in here who've run around 2:06, but not too many who've gone significantly quicker than that, and there's a little bit of a gap back there to Bonsa Dida. We'll keep our eye on that to see whether it was a gap through fatigue or whether he just took a couple of extra strides to make sure he got his own specific drink at the refueling stations. But 2:06 is pretty solid. Well, I mean, it's world class, but you know, by their standards, I think that's pretty sensible. And if they want to pick up half a minute or so, they can do that as the race begins to unfold in the second half. As I said, there has been a couple of metres grown, but Dida did pause to get his drink. So I often think, Richard, when you're commentating on the big city marathons, he might have a problem, but sometimes it's simply a case of them very gradually working their way back to the pack if they had an awkward moment and had to have a double take to get their own specific drink. But we'll keep our eye on it.
Yeah, and it's so important that the athletes do manage to get their drinks, and I think you're right that sometimes it's probably worthwhile just making sure you do pick up your drink rather than going with the flow, staying with the group and not taking on that hydration. So we will see whether Dida is struggling. It looks as though he has rejoined that group. He's right at the back of that group. Yeah, I mean, I remember last year when Wanjiru set the course record, he went through halfway in a slower pace than we expected. 63.20 was his halfway split last year, and then came home in a blisteringly fast 62.01. So in many ways, negative splits is the way to go, whether you're looking to win this race or just run a fast time.
Were you quite good at mastering negative splits when you were racing?
Well, I think the hard thing when you're competing at this level is, in many ways, you often have to go with the group and take advantage of running in the group. I mean, my personal best time came in London, and I didn't do a negative split there, and I think if I could have chosen the pace that I wanted to go through halfway, it would have been a little bit slower, but at the same time I took advantage of being part of that lead group and being carried along. So here we are at halfway, and yes, as we thought, they're a little bit slower than the course record pace, going through halfway in just outside 63 minutes. But in many ways, as we've been saying, that might set them up for a very fast finish. And the good thing for them is that the three pacemakers, led by Sami Kitwara, the experienced marathon runner Kitwara from Kenya, right at the front of that group. So they will be hoping that Kitwara can stay at the front of that group and do as much of the leading as possible through to at least 25k, if not a bit further.
Yeah, and I just noticed as they headed towards the halfway mark that Albert Kangogo, who was wearing number 80, he has dropped back. So it is still Kitwara charged with getting them through. And we've touched on his CV already. I mean, he was second last year. He's a 2:04.28 man, so he should be feeling very comfortable at low 63s. I think it's really sensible running. It's a great platform from which to produce a brilliant time in the second half of the race. And also, as we just see that second group going through there in a shade over 64 minutes, low 2:08s for Zane Robertson and everybody else in this group, which is significant for Robertson's quest for a national record and could also be significant for Negei's bid to secure a national record for the Netherlands. Great pacing by that second group. 64 minutes. They've given themselves a brilliant opportunity, in many cases for the guys in that chase group, Richard, for a lifetime best. And in the case of Negay and Robertson, 2 big national records up for grabs.
Yes, and it'd be interesting to see whether the other pacemaker for that second group, Michel Butter, stays in the race, because again, if he can stay at the front and lead them through at least 25k, there's that second group. It looks as though Butter has also dropped out. So Michel Butter, in training for the New York Marathon, he stepped off the road alongside Khalid Chugud. So that second group, as you say, aiming for a time of around 2 hours and 8 minutes. They might still have one pacemaker there, we'll have to see. But certainly the leaders have got 2 of their 3 pacemakers. Number 98, Edwin Koech, on the right of the screen, and number 81, Sami Kitwara. And as we've been saying, right on the shoulder of the pacemaker on the right, Edwin Koech, is the Ethiopian Tesfaye Abara.
Meshach Koech still in that group, Richard. We've mentioned him already, the younger brother to Emmanuel Mutai. But Negay, cameras focusing on him, a lot of attention on him here in the Netherlands. As Richard was saying, came here from Somalia at the age of 4. Very much accepted, loved and adopted by the Dutch, in the same way that Great Britain's Mo Farah came over from Somalia. I think Mo was a little older, 8 or 9. Did his schooling in Feltham, and we await the second marathon in the career of Mo Farah in London. The reigning world champion over 10,000 metres and Olympic champion, who drew a close to his track career in glorious fashion in London. Missed out on the double after being out-sprinted by a magnificent performance from Mukhtar Idris on the last lap in the 5. But Mo, by his own high standards, will want to improve on his 2:08 performance in London a couple of years ago. Still got some margin to go before he gets Steve Jones' British record. You must have been teammates with Steve Jones, or had he just tailed off when you were beginning?
Yes, I mean, I think Steve won in New York in '88, towards the end of a great marathon career, and I didn't really start running marathons until '93. But, you know, Steve was definitely one of the British athletes that I was looking up to as I was making my way through the ranks. And in fact, we did cross paths at 1 or 2 races when he was running for the RAF. He used to come down to the university, and we had a few races together. So, yeah, Steve Jones, one of the great names in world marathon runners in the 1980s. And as you said, Rob still has the British record, which will be very interesting to see whether Mo can take that off Jonesy when he runs in London next April.
And I guess the fact that Mo Farah, you know, 4-time Olympic champion, multiple world champion, I think 10 world titles across the 10,000 and the 5,000. The fact that Mo ran 2:08 shows you how difficult a transition it can be from the very, very top of a track career. You know, you don't automatically come out and have a guaranteed rite of passage to a 2:04 or a 2:05. You really have to earn your times in the marathon the hard way, no matter how much talent you've displayed on a track.
Yeah, I mean, I think 3 years ago when Mo ran his debut in London, there was a lot of expectation. And we've talked today quite a lot about some of the top performers here making their marathon debut and how hard it is to run a fast time and to run a good race. And I think Mo found that. And you know, looking back over the great marathon runners of the last 20 years, even the likes of Turgat, Haile Gebrselassie, both world record holders at the marathon, didn't perform at their best, or didn't run their best race in their first race. And so, you know, when Mo came out in London 3 years ago, huge expectation from what he performed on the track. But I think when he goes to London next year, he'll have the experience of doing his first marathon 3 years ago, and also having done a number of half marathons since. So I think we can expect a faster time. Whether we can expect him to win London is another question, because the calibre of the field that London always has.
Yeah, it's a tall order to win these big city marathons. Just at the back of that group, Onsa Dida, 47, 14 is Meshak Koech, going really well. Luka Rotic is also in that group. This is the chasers. Abdi Nagay there, the local directors focusing in on him with great excitement to see how closely he can stick to 2:08.21 pace with Zane Robertson alongside him. And we'll be hoping they went through in just over 64 minutes, so they are on course for low to mid 2:08s. So we will keep a very, very close eye on that second group to see whether the New Zealander and the Dutchman can get close to those two national records.
Well, we've talked a lot about how fast Amsterdam is, and of course one of the reasons it's fast is because it's flat, and one of the reasons it's so flat is because a good stretch of the course runs along the river. And I think that many of the runners, and particularly the slower runners in today's race, will actually appreciate being along the river because of the high temperatures. The temperature is expected to rise to over 20 degrees in around lunchtime and in the afternoon hours. So probably being on the river is a little bit cooler than back in the city, where the heat will be trapped between some of the high buildings. But the leaders coming towards the end of their out and back section on the banks of the river, and in a few minutes will be leaving the river and heading north into Amsterdam's business district. But still a relatively large group of around 15, 16 athletes. Got about four or five Ethiopians in that group, and around 10 or 11 Kenyans running behind the two pacemakers still in the race. Kitwara 81 and Edwin Koech 98, and we're back now to the second group. Still a nice group to be part of, as we've seen Zane Robertson for the entire race up to this point, just trying to position himself right in the middle of that group, running just behind or off the shoulder of the athletes around him. Abdi Nagaya, number 19, I was speaking to him yesterday, and he was saying a personal best will be a big step forward. Well, he's certainly within reach of that, going off his halfway split of 64.10. They were taken through halfway. Question now is whether he can keep going at that pace.
And that is the million-dollar question. I mean, at every level, Richard, you know, there's that old adage that in terms of how your body feels, at 20 miles, you're about halfway, because it's really easy to be blasé, get to 20, and in your head you think, oh yeah, I've only got to run 6 miles. Well, fine. You get up on a Sunday morning and run 6 miles, it's a piece of cake when you're in good shape. But to put a decent 6 miles together when you've already got 20 in your legs, that is a different matter. So we will keep our fingers and toes crossed for Nagay and for Zane Robertson that they can stick to that low 2:08 schedule. But there's bound to be some movement up and down amongst the chasers. Now 13, so that's Jackson Kiprop, just finding himself at the back of that group. He's a fine runner, Kiprop, twice 10th in the world cross. You don't finish in the top 10 of the world cross country if you're not a world-class athlete. He was 7th in the world half a few years ago. Now, does this indicate he had a problem? Ah, he fell over. Wow. Well, thankfully, that's the reason why the Ugandan was off the back. We were thinking perhaps he was beginning to struggle with the pace. Not so. And I think he's been really sensible there, Richard, because I'm sure you were coached to do this when you were young, even at my much lower level than you achieved. all the coaches said, if you fall over in a race, don't sprint to get back, work your way back gradually. And he looks, from what we can see here, he looks as though he's okay, but that must have been a shock to his body.
Yes, it looked as though it could have been just a momentary lapse in concentration. Looked as though he caught the shoe of the athlete in front of him and went down. And of course, that's very unfortunate for Kiprop, but it's good to see him back in that group. And I think Rob, we were mentioning about Kiprop, has got a pretty impressive record. He won the Mumbai Marathon, which is never a cold weather marathon. So, you know, has proved that he can compete well when the temperatures are a little bit higher. And of course, Mumbai itself is a difficult course. So, has come into this race off the back of his best time set in Rotterdam earlier this year, 2:09.32. And we'll be looking to make a big improvement, and certainly operating at that pace today. Well, that's the chasing group, and we can see that Negea is starting to struggle, just falling a few metres off the leading, or the group, sorry, the chasing group. Was a group of around 7 athletes. Zane Robertson still with the group, at the back of that group. And Negea, well, having to work quite hard to stay with them. Of course, as you mentioned some time ago, Rob, it's difficult to know whether the athletes are struggling or whether they're just going through a bad patch, or whether they've just decided to move from the front of the group to the back of the group. But we'll see whether Negea can go with them, but it definitely will help Negea if he can be carried along by that group.
Yeah, and judging by the splits, they went through there in about 1:16 for the 25k marker, so they are still on for 2:08. So he's not a million miles away. If he is experiencing a bad patch, there are another 7 athletes in that chase group. So hopefully, from a Dutch perspective, he can weather the storm that he may be experiencing. Meanwhile, this is still a huge group. We haven't really seen many casualties here, have we? We've not yet lost a big name.
We haven't. One of the names that we're looking at now, number 9 in the orange vest, Lawrence Chirono, has uncharacteristically high arm carriage, you can see, for a marathon runner. But he's got a best time of 2 hours, 6 minutes and 21 seconds set in Rotterdam earlier this year, where he finished second. It was a 5-minute personal best for him. So he will be coming into this race full of confidence. And he's right up there, right, you can see now, almost taking the lead on the left-hand side of that leading group. And looks as though there's number 81, Sami Kitwara. Well, it'll be interesting now to see whether any of the pacemakers will be able to keep going. It might be that this is the place where the pacemakers drop out.
Well, this will be the point where we see, isn't it? Maybe Kitwara's come back to the front, so I wonder, maybe he's been instructed to carry on to 30.
Well, that will certainly help the other athletes. If Kitwara, it does look now, yeah, Kitwara's back at the front of that group.
I mean, it's bizarre in a funny kind of way, Richard. He's the second quickest in the field on paper with 2:04.28, and he's a World Half Marathon bronze medalist. He's capable. If he was competing here rather than pacemaking, you'd put him down as joint favourite.
Yes, I mean,
it's ludicrous, really.
It's a long time since we've seen a pacemaker go on and win a race, but if there's one athlete who could do it, it could be Kitwara. And it's interesting that Kitwara actually hasn't finished a marathon this year. Unusually for Kitwara, we're used to seeing him in the big city marathons finishing in a podium position. This year he's done the pacemaking in Boston and in Berlin just a month ago. We're not expecting Kitwara to finish the race today, but he's certainly of the calibre that could run away from this field if he really wanted to. But it's good to see Kitwara as the pacemaker leading the runners. We're expecting him now to try to keep going through at least till 30k. That would be a huge help for the runners. That leading group starting I think to be whittled down. Number 9, as we mentioned, Lawrence Chirono from Kenya.
He's got a brilliant record actually, Richard. He might not be one of the quickest in the field, although you mentioned that PB came with his second place finish in Rotterdam this year. He's run 9 marathons, Chirono. He's been on the podium in 8 of them. Now, I know if you were being really harsh, you might say, well, look, some of those podium appearances are not necessarily at the very, very, very higher echelons of big city marathons, but it shows a superb consistency. Won Honolulu and Prague last year, was second in Hong Kong, second in Heng Shui. He nearly always finishes on the podium when he runs, and he proved that in Rotterdam. So he's wearing that distinctive orange vest in 3rd place, if you count Kitwara as part of the race at the moment. I'm not sure the organisers would be overly happy if Kitwara decided that he wanted to finish the race, but as Richard said, it's not unheard of. But, you know, Chirono is a class act, and there he is, right up on the shoulder of Edwin Kiptu, and just a shade behind Sami Kitwara.
So 18 athletes at the front of the race, being led by number 81, the pacemaker, Sami Kitwara. Wilson Chebet, 3-time champion, still in that group. Amos Kipruto, one of the favourites. And 1 or 2 athletes who are operating at a pace much faster than their best time for the marathon. The tall figure in the white vest of Tesfaye Abada, 25-year-old Ethiopian, right in the middle of that group. So still a lot to play for, and we will expect that group of 18 athletes to be whittled down over the final third of this race.
I guess one of the key moments in this race, Richard, will come. I know we've been sort of slightly joking, tongue-in-cheek about Kitwara deciding to finish the race, but it's unusual for that to happen. Assuming he goes to 30 and then drops out, as we look at Zane Robertson, maybe just showing for the first time, as we get a great close-up side-on shot, maybe just showing the effects here a little bit. Now, he just happened to reach down with his right hand towards the groin. I wonder if Big Robertson is running into problems here. It's been a case of so far so good. Sensible pacing. This is the New Zealander who said he wanted to break Rod Dixon's New Zealand national record of high 208s, but really wanted 207. He's definitely encountering a problem here, and it's happened very quickly. But going back to the lead group, maybe the key moment, or one of the key moments, will be when Kitwara finishes, if he does, at 30k. Who's going to be prepared to take up the reins with such a huge group still left all around them?
Yes, I think that will be an interesting moment, Rob. I think that it's quite likely with such a big group that there will be 1 or 2 athletes who will be feeling very, very good. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if there are 1 or 2 front runners in this group. They'll all have their particular styles of training at home in their own training groups, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if 1 or 2 of them, when they get to 30k, are feeling good and decide to strike out in front. But I guess we'll be used to seeing 1 or 2 of the more experienced runners trying to hold back and keep something in reserve for the final 5k. Well, that is interesting, isn't it, Rob? Abdi Nagea, who a few minutes ago looked as though he was falling off that chasing group, he's back with the chasing group, whereas Zane Robertson is struggling now. I think we saw Kitwara.
Yeah, I think that might have been somebody in blue stopped. Now, logic would tell us that would be Sami Kitwara, which would indicate that his pacemaking duties are over, and now we're down to the race proper. And yes, it must be Kitwara, because we're looking now, and all of a sudden it's Lawrence Chirono in the orange strip. He leads, and we just can see behind all the phalanx of people following that lead group, Kitwara's gone, no more pacemakers. Now we get to the business end of this race at 28.5k, an hour and 25 minutes of running. Now they're on their own.
Yeah, and Kitwara's done a really good job getting them through to 28k, so we're now into the final third of the race, the last 14 kilometres, and it's going to be fascinating to see in the orange vest Lawrence Chirono, number 16, Edwin Kiptu, a training partner of Kitwara, and as we suspected, that athlete, Chirono, looks as though he's striding out and almost trying to detach himself from the leaders, which is a bold move.
Well, there's the answer to the question, Richard. Who's going to take the bit between the teeth, get the bull between the horns? And it's Lawrence Chirono with a PB of 2:06.12, and a mark of respect from the others is the speed with which they've responded. They've decided to get right back on terms. Actually, Abraham Kiptum, who it says here his PB is 2:14. He's the athlete in second place.
So we're just seeing once again where Sami Kitwara decided enough was enough. He'd done enough pacemaking, and that was the point at which, at 28 kilometres, his compatriot Chirono picked up the reins and struck out in front. But as you said, Rob, although it looked as though he was trying to make a move up front, but look how that leading group has stretched out. That leading group, in the matter of minutes, is now down to 10 athletes.
Yes, and we have lost Jackson Kiprop. There he is in the foreground with Luka Rotic just up ahead of him. So the first two casualties are the Ugandan Kiprop, twice 10th in the World Cross, remember. As Richard was saying, a brilliant gutsy win in the Mumbai Marathon in brutal conditions back in 2013. Kiprop struggling with that pace, and so too Luka Rotic. So here at the 28k mark, 29k mark, one by one, they are beginning to drop off that lead group.
It's down to 11 athletes, I think, now. Although obviously it's possible that one or two athletes just a few metres back will fight their way back into that leading group. Number 7, Amos Kiprutu, here in Amsterdam for the second time. Had a disappointing run here last year. Could only manage 13th.
21, by the way, we've mentioned him already, is Hilary Kipsambu. He's got a PB of outside 2:10. So he's on course to absolutely annihilate his lifetime best by something in the region of 3.5, maybe even 4 minutes. But there's still a very long way to go. And that's a shame for Meshak Koech, the younger brother of Emmanuel Mutai. He too finding himself a casualty, Richard, of that injection of pace from Lawrence Chirono. And it's all happened the minute we lost Kitwara.
And also, it's happening in the second half of the race, as we expected. I mean, so many of these runners, including Meshak Koech, have run incredibly fast times for the half marathon. I think Koech has run 60:08, 60, you know, two half marathon times just over the hour. And yet, once the marathon distance really starts to tell, when they get into the final third of the race, that's when it gets tough. And so Koech is off that leading group, but a number of the favourites, including Tesfaye Abada, Amos Kiprutu and Edwin Kiptu, and I think the former champion Wilson Chibet.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we were writing him off. We were trying not to be too disrespectful. We were simply pointing out that his 3 Amsterdam wins came in 2011, 12 and 13, and in the last 3 years he's had a did not finish, or we say in commentary speak, a DNF, in 2014. 5th 2 years ago, and 12th last year. But Wilson Chibet, Mr. Amsterdam, is right up there in that lead group at the moment.
I think one of the reasons that he's come in with low expectations is that when the organisers announced their lineup for this year's race, he wasn't included in that early announcement. I don't think they knew whether Chibet was going to come back for an 8th consecutive appearance here. and it was only a few weeks ago that Chebet confirmed he was indeed going to start his 8th Amsterdam Marathon, and wearing number 3. Can we spot him there, Rob?
Yeah, he's at the front of the lead group. We're looking at the rear where Bonsa Dida is still there, wearing 47, as they head through 30k in just a shade inside the hour and a half. So it's still around about, what, 2:06, there or thereabouts, but we can expect some fireworks in this last 6 and a bit miles, Richard, that's for certain. But Chebet is right there, 3-time Amsterdam winner, and as you've indicated, and the reason that, you know, it wasn't too long ago that we finally got a confirmation that Chebet was taking part. What a story that would be if he was to win. We just got a glimpse of Abdi Nagay going for that Dutch national record, still in touch with that chase group. We don't, there he is, a couple of metres opening up maybe. We don't know what's happening to Zane Robertson, who the last time we got a glimpse from the brilliant on-bike cameramen, he was off the back and had made a little motion to grab the top of his thigh with his right hand. So we're hoping that Robertson is still going, but the signs weren't good the last time we saw the New Zealander.
But Nagaya certainly looks as though he has rejoined that group. It's quite interesting. Every now and then it looks as though he's dropping either to the back or off the back of that group, but right now he's very much part of that group as they go through 30 kilometres.
He is, he's going well. So 1:31, he's there or thereabouts. He's not a million miles away from this national record. And we do need to remind ourselves, as he has said to you and his coach has said to you in the build-up, Richard, although there's a lot of excitement and publicity in Holland about his quest to beat 2:08.21, a PB would be magnificent. Sub 2:09 would be brilliant. You know, he did really well to run 2:09.34 in Rotterdam. But at the moment, he is on course for another personal best.
So 13 athletes in that leading group. Number 7 on the right of the screen, Amos Kipruto. And that's one of the athletes, Bonsa Dida, who we mentioned earlier. And look, Edwin Kiptu. Edwin Kiptu making his debut here in Amsterdam. Well, he's really looking as though he's struggling to stay with the leaders and dropping further back as they pick up the pace. Going through 30 kilometres. Well, we've talked about this critical part in the race. 7 miles to go, 12 kilometres of very, very hard running. Abdi Nagaya, well, wouldn't it be good to see him run another personal best? We saw him run a personal best here 2 years ago when he ran the Olympic qualifying time to get on the Dutch team for Rio. He ran 2:10.34 2 years ago. Well, today he's trying to run around 2 minutes quicker, or at least a minute quicker to run a personal best, and 2 minutes quicker would see him getting very close to the Dutch national record of Camille Mars, 2:08.21, which was set here in Amsterdam.
Oh, look at this, Richard, from Chirono. He's back at the front, dominating the pace once again. We should mention the athlete wearing 46. I think I've touched on him before, Abraham Kiptum. He's got a PB of outside 2:14. So he's running the race of his life at the moment. Norbert Kigen is still there, Laban Korea, and the huge presence of Abara, the Ethiopian, the 25-year-old, the quickest in the field, the huge figure. He's an ominous presence. 45 is Joseph Aparumai. He won Rio a few years ago. He ran 60.54 at altitude. I think that was in Eldoret.
Well, it is interesting, Rob. We've got a few inexperienced athletes in the mix with some of the more experienced ones. We've got a number of the race favourites in that leading group, including Tesfaye Abara, Mule Wasahun, Stephen Chibagut, Laban Korea and Amos Kipruto. So many of the athletes who we were expected to feature in the latter stages of the race, and of course the three-time champion Wilson Chebet in that very distinctive rolling action, still in that group, being led by the orange vested Lawrence Chirono.
So 11 men, well 12 if you count the man desperately trying to claw his way back to that group. But what a declaration of intent this is from Chirono. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in the field who are quicker than him on paper, but we were talking about the 29-year-old earlier. He is the man who has run 9 marathons and finished on the podium in 8 of them. And we've also been having a discussion, Richard, about the various merits and arguments about who makes the more complete marathon runner. Is it the guys who come through your route, the 5s and the 10s and cross country, and then up to the marathon? Or is it the guys who go straight on the roads? And possibly a little bit unusually, Chirono doesn't even have any performances. There's a brilliant athletics statisticians website that commentators subscribe to called Tilastapaya. It's based in Finland. I couldn't even find any half marathon times for Lawrence Chirono. Every single world-class performance he's produced has come exclusively at the marathon distance, and he's really going for this.
Yes, and I think also what's quite remarkable is that he only ran his first marathon 2 years ago in Seville. He's run 8 marathons in his career to date, and there he is at the front of the race. This is one of the less experienced athletes, Kip Sambu, who is now finding the pace at the front very, very tough, and he's falling back, and I would expect him to fall back quite quickly. And we can see that leading group now being whittled down. This is the, sorry, that's the chasing group.
Yeah, the leading group are definitely getting whittled down. It was 11 at one stage. Now that's significant. Chebet's gone off the back, Richard. Wilson Chebet, number 3, Mr. Amsterdam. He has gone off the back, and so too, well, we'd already seen Aparumoy go, and the wheels are coming off here for Chebet in a not too dissimilar manner than you predicted from the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to hand it to Chebet what he's contributed to the history of the marathon here in Amsterdam. But as you say, Rob, this is quite familiar now for the last 2 or 3 years since he won here in 2013. He didn't finish the race in 2014, and in the last 2 editions of the race, and again today, we've seen him struggle over the last quarter of the distance, and that looks to be the case again today.
Yeah, and another casualty of this incessant pace from Lawrence Chirono is Laban Correa. 4th last year, inside 2:06, runner-up in 2:06.05 back in 2011. He had a really good performance in Rotterdam earlier this year. 8 times Laban Correa has gone inside 2:10, but you can see him there wearing number 6 just in the background, and one by one they are being dropped. So we had 11, now 8 remain.
And as we expected, very much a battle between the Ethiopians and the Kenyans. I think, if I'm counting correctly, we've got 3 Ethiopians and 5 Kenyans, including the fastest athlete in the field, Tesfaye Abada. We're now back to Abdi Nagea's group. Abdi Nagea still looking very comfortable at the back of that group, going through 30k in 1:31.14. So still on a time which would see him come home in inside his best time, 2:09.34. Set in Rotterdam earlier this year.
Really intriguing climax that we're in for here, Richard, because there's a couple of names in that group of 8 that we weren't necessarily expecting to be there, including Abraham Kiptum. He's got that PB of 2:14. And I think that's him alongside Amos Kipruto, isn't it? It is.
Well, Amsterdam, it's interesting how it last year it threw up a surprising winner in the form of Daniel Wanjiru, who then went on to win an even bigger victory in London earlier this year. Well, Yitayalat Nafu, one of the leading Ethiopian runners, he's starting to struggle. So that group of 8 runners is now down to 6 runners, with the tall Ethiopian Tesfaye Abada at the back of that group, and we're just trying to work out whether he's starting to struggle. So the race really opening up now in the final 9-10 kilometres. Stephen Chibagut, another of the very fast athletes, starting to drop back.
Yeah, this is amazing. We thought Chibagut might have a chance. I mean, okay, he's not completely isolated from this group, but there's only one reason you're allowing a gap to grow at this stage. So he's off the back, and Abera has also allowed a gap to grow. The fastest man in the field by over a minute, the man wearing number 2, the huge, tall Ethiopian, he too has drifted off the back of this lead group, and he's going to have to work very, very hard to rejoin what is now a leading quintet. Only 5 still in the mix. You've got Amos Kipruto in buoyant mood and great form after a PB of 2:05.54 in Seoul earlier this year. The unheralded Abraham Kiptum wearing 46, who's on course to annihilate his personal best by about 8 minutes. Lawrence Chirono in the orange, the man who was the first to go to the front after Kitwara disappeared off the pace. Muli Wasihun, second in Dubai this year, he's still in that group. And Norbert Kigen, 2:06.07, he was 4th in Seoul, behind Amos Kipruto. But it looks as though Tesfaye Abera's quest for glory here, after a brilliant performance in Dubai and Hamburg last year, well, the difficult days continue for him. Brilliant last year in Dubai and Hamburg, didn't finish Rio, 17th in London, and he looks as though he's having a tough end to his race here in Amsterdam. He's isolated in 6th place at the moment.
And it looks as though it's number 7, Amos Kipruto, who is making the pace at the moment and making them having to work very hard. A few minutes back, it was number 9, Chirono, who was doing the work. He's now drifted to the back of that group. But the surprise in that leading group of 5 is number 46, Abraham Kiptum. Kipruto, we thought he was one of the favourites coming into this race, with 2 marathon victories from his 3 marathon starts in his relatively short marathon career. But fascinating battle, 5 athletes. Just one Ethiopian in that group of 5, Mule Wasihun. He's the one track athlete, isn't he, Rob? We've talked a bit about how athletes make that transition. Well, Wasihun is a former national track 10,000 metre champion, went to the African Championships in 2015, finished 7th there, and since then has moved up to the marathon and has run 4 marathons over the past 2 years, including 3 fast times in Dubai.
Yeah, and he's we said this about an hour ago, Richard. His record's good in Dubai. He's gone 11th, 5th and 2nd. So it shows you, even though he's only 23, he's got a little bit of track pedigree, and he's coming to terms and getting to grips with the marathon distance, talking about the Ethiopian who is in white. Now, we keep a little bit of an eye there on Norbert Kigen. It might simply be this metre or so that he was taking an opportunity to grab his water bottles. But Amos Kipruto looks really good at the moment. Now, he was 13th here last year because he was ill, and he said before the race that he felt he had a point to prove and a score to settle, as it were, having blotted his otherwise brilliant copybook, winning in Seoul and winning in Rome. And as I mentioned a while ago, being on the podium in 4 of his 5 half marathons. So in his 8 major races so far, Kipruto, if you combine the half marathons and the marathons, he's only been off the podium twice. And one of those occasions was here last year because he was ill. So he's got a fine record, and he's the one who's dominating the pace. But all 4 of the others still very much in the hunt. And Abraham Kiptum, from a PB at 2:14.38, is running the race of his life. Absolutely extraordinary that he's on course for such a quick time here.
Well, it is interesting, isn't it, that Amsterdam might be the stepping stone and the making of many athletes. I mean, some ways we saw that last year with Wanjiru, who came here as a bit of an unknown and surprised everyone by beating the champion Bernard Kipyego, and then went on to even greater things earlier this year when he won in London. And I just wonder whether Kiptum came here very much as an outsider, not one of the favourites, not one of the athletes with a fast time to his name. Well, he is still in that group of 5, still very much in the fray. We're back now with the chasing group. Abdi Nagaya still looking really good. Are we going to see a new Dutch national record? Well, that would be something.
Hopefully, from his point of view, Richard, he's at least on course for a PB to get beneath that 2:09.34 that he produced in Rotterdam. But still, the 5 men. Wassihun, yes, we might have predicted he would be there. Kigen, he's running well after 4th in Seoul, and Amos Kipruto. But a couple of surprise packages there, none more so than Abraham Kiptum.
Interestingly, Rob, Norbert Keegan and Amos Kipruto ran their last marathon in Seoul together. And on that occasion, Kipruto came out top. He won in Seoul, and Keegan just finished a few seconds back in 4th place. So they will know each other from that race.
That's Kiptum. A brilliant story, and the birth of a new world-class career, because you would argue, touch wood from his point of view, even if he gets an attack of cramp, even if the wheels come off in the last 4 or 5k, he's surely going to absolutely smash his personal best. Now, there's a real drive on here from Amos Kipruto, and all of a sudden, Lawrence Chirono, the man in orange, is the first one to begin to feel the heat. Still attached to this group of 5, but rather than running side by side, it's looking a little bit more single file. That's the chase group, and as you've said, Richard, Nagay is running brilliantly to be right up there with Saboka. He's just got to keep this going. Can he close in on that national record? Kipruto driving on, Kigen in 2nd. Chirono is still there at the moment, but Amos Kipruto driving on, hoping to secure a 3rd big city marathon win. Seoul and Rome. Can he add Amsterdam to that collection? That would be some hat-trick of performances, and I'll bet there'll be a few agents and a few race organisers around the world wanting to add him to their fields.
Yeah, I mean, Kipruto has looked very impressive, not only coming in with a very strong record, 2 out of 3 marathon victories, but very interesting that in his 25 years, hasn't got a lot of experience. Started running marathons just 18 months ago when he won in Rome with the time of 2:10:49. There he is, right in the middle of that leading group of three as they come past what's known as Margaretbrücke, Skinny Bridge, one of the famous sights of Amsterdam. A beautiful shot of the Amstel River as the runners come back towards Vondel Park. 37 kilometres, just over 5 kilometres to run, and that leading group of 5, the 2 blue-vested athletes, Kip Ruto, number 7, Norbert Keegan, number 8, and Lawrence Chirono. Well, it looks as though he's fought his way back into the group, so still 5 athletes together with 5 kilometres to run. This is where the racing is really going to start, but look how smooth Kip Ruto looks. Right in the middle of that group, in the white vest, the sole Ethiopian, Mule Wasserhoen.
Yeah, and Wasserhoen is the fastest in the field on paper, Richard, but it's not about who's got a quicker PB by 10 or 12 seconds at this point. This is about who has managed to run most of the race as conservatively as possible and who wants it the most, which I know sounds like a bit of a cliche, but the mental strength really comes into play at this stage of a marathon. It's such a brutal distance to run. No matter how slow or how fast you are, all 5 of these men will be really hurting at the moment. Kigen, wearing number 8, 4th in Seoul. Behind Amos Kipruto, just to his left in the centre of your picture, who won with that marvellous PB, also lowered his half-marathon personal best to 60:24. Lawrence Chirono, who nearly always finishes on the podium in a big marathon. Mule Wasserhoen in the white, the sole Ethiopian. 2nd in Dubai this year, 9th last year here in Amsterdam, looks certain to improve on that. And then the unheralded Abraham Kiptum, 6th in the Copenhagen half marathon last year. And the subplot here, as far as the Dutch are concerned, can Abdi Nagay keep this going? Will it be a personal best? We hope so. Could it be a new national record? Well, maybe, but he's going to have to produce a huge last 5K if he is to get into the Dutch record books. Great stories unfolding amongst the leaders and in the chasers. And if you've been following the race and you're interested in Zane Robertson, we still don't have a confirmation at the moment as to whether the New Zealander is still going. The last time we saw him, he had a major problem, and having looked comfortable up until around the 25, 26k mark, the last time we saw him at 27k, he had drifted off the back of the chase group. It would be nice to think he's finished, but we can't confirm that, and we'll bring the information as to his race as soon as we can. But these are the leaders.
Fascinating finish. It's not often in Amsterdam that we have 5 athletes together going into the last 5 kilometres. I remember last year it was Wanjiru against Bernard Kipyego, just head-to-head. Well, this year it looks as though we're going to have more than a couple of them as they head back towards Vondel Park. They're just a kilometre or so from the gates of Vondel Park, and then they'll have a couple of kilometres through the park before the stadium comes into sight. And it looks as though, was that Kip Ruto? One of the, either Keegan, maybe it was Keegan, Norbert Keegan had gone to the front. And now with just 4 kilometres to run, as the runners go past the Rijksmuseum, oh, it looks like it's Wasserhoen, the Ethiopian, who's the first to drop off. And it is indeed Norbert Keegan who's really trying to break them up. So 4 Kenyans ahead of the Ethiopian. Mule Wasserhoen with a best time of 2:05.54 coming into this race. He's the one who's first starting to suffer. And the other surprise there is Amos Kipruto now having to work very hard to stay with that leading group of 3 being led by Norbert Keegan.
Wow. Keegan has really gone for this. What a story it would be if he was to manage to win and that's a real shame. Wilson Chibet by the side of the road. We saw him beginning to struggle around the 30k mark, and once again not finishing as he did in 2014, although he has contributed some great moments of drama to the race here in Amsterdam over the years. But while his aspirations for another title have gone, what an opportunity this is for Norbert Keegan. He's got Lawrence Chirono just outside him. Abraham Kiptum is there. Mule Wasihun, who was the fastest of the 5 still remaining, has allowed a gap to grow. And Amos Kipruto, who for so long, when there were athletes dropping off the back, was setting the pace, he's now become a little bit isolated in 4th place. Wasihun will look up ahead to Amos Kipruto. The bike camera's doing a really good job. That's a definitive gap there from Amos Kipruto. He'll do well now to close this down. So all of a sudden, only 3 remain, Richard. It's so hard to pick a winner from here. Keegan ran brilliantly for a PB in Seoul, finishing 4th in 2:06.07. Lawrence Chirono was 2nd in Rotterdam earlier this year and nearly always produces his best when it counts. And Abraham Kiptum is having the race of his life in 3rd place.
And there we've got another shot of Abdi Nagea going past the Rijksmuseum. So less than 5 kilometres to run for Nagea. And if we look at the time, 1:56. I think that's the time for the leaders at 39 kilometres. Not for Nagea, but Nagea still on target for a personal best, certainly, and possibly even an attempt at Camille Maas's Dutch record. But those are the first 3 as they head through Vondel Park with just 3 kilometres to run. And Norbert Keegan on the right of your screen, number 8, still at the front, and in my eyes, Rob, is possibly the most comfortable of the 3. He was the one who broke up that group of 5. Looked as though he'd put in a bit of a surge a kilometre or so back. So it's Keegan running alongside his compatriot Lawrence Chirono with the lesser-known Abraham Kiptum trying to hang on and hanging on well.
Yeah, I think Kiptum's really having to work here. He is absolutely still attached to the 2 men in front, but just for a moment there, about 100 metres or so ago, I sensed a tiny gap opening up. Chirono, well, what a story. As soon as Sami Kitwara drifted off the back at around about 28k, Chirono hit the front, but then he experienced a bad patch and had to work his way back to the lead group. I tell you what, though, Kiptum's definitely having to work there. There's another metre growing. He's still there, but whatever's going on between Chirono in the orange and Keegan in the blue, Abraham Kiptum is really, really working. But look at this, having been behind and looking as though he's fighting for his life to stay with that group, he's suddenly taken the initiative. What a climax we're in line for here. And it's so difficult to pick a winner here.
It's so difficult
because none of them come from a track background.
Yeah, and also they've got very differing styles. If you look at Lawrence Chirono, very high arm carriage. There he is at the front. Doesn't look as comfortable as Norbert Keegan, who's now dropped to the back of that group of 3. And as you were saying, Abraham Kiptum, who a minute ago looked as though he was having to work very hard, has put in a bit of a surge to make sure he's not at the back of that group as they go through 40 kilometres, so just over 2 kilometres to run. Well, what a battle this is turning out to be. Lawrence Chirono, that high arm carriage leading the lesser-known Abraham Kiptum.
He's definitely going for this as we look at Abdi Nagea going through in 1:59.
Well, this is interesting because now Norbert Keegan has overtaken Kiptum, and now I wonder if that effort by Kiptum to keep up with his two compatriots, maybe that was his last serious effort, because Lawrence Chirono now is trying to gap Norbert Keegan, but Keegan refusing to be dropped. But there are a few meters now between the leader, Lawrence Chirono, and second place Keegan. Can Keegan work his way back? Fascinating battle.
Well, and the other really absorbing thing here is as we watch Abdi Nagay, who's hopefully on course for a PB and could get close to that Dutch national record. He's on his own now, but he only has a couple of kilometres to go. He's run a fine race, he really has, considering it wasn't too long ago that he was delighted to run 2:10 plus change to make the Dutch Olympic squad, 11th in Rio in tough conditions. But look at this. Keegan is still just about in touch with Lawrence Chirono. Now maybe what he's got to say to himself here is, Chirono's giving everything he's got. What this pace surely indicates is that Lawrence Chirono does not want this to come down to a sprint finish in the stadium. So if Keegan can weather this storm, and it looks like he is doing at the moment, could he deny Lawrence Chirono the victory with a sprint here in the Olympic Stadium? He's close enough that this is still not assured for Lawrence Chirono. I still think it could go to either man.
And Rob, just looking at their 40k split, they are running incredibly fast. If they can close fast, they're going to be very close to Wanjiro's course record of 2:05.20. And I think because they're fighting each other, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they're going to get close to that course record today. So there's the third place, Kiptum. I think he's now doing all he can to hang on to that third place, but right up at the front, it's those two athletes, the orange-vested Lawrence Chirono wearing number 9, and it looks as though Keegan is really running tactically, just hanging on to the shoulder as they come within sight of the stadium. There is Abdi Nagaya, still looking good, still running smoothly through Vondel Park. It won't be long before he catches sight of the stadium, and he knows that his goal is within reach of running another personal best here in Amsterdam.
Wow, Norbert Keegan, who produced a massive lifetime best in Seoul earlier this year, he has weathered the Lawrence Chirono storm. Chirono seems desperate to find himself a couple of meters ahead of his compatriot. Two men who wouldn't necessarily be the highest profile marathon runners in their country, but they're flying the flag for a nation with a rich history in distance running, in fine style, and both of them surely now will smash their personal bests. They're running brilliantly. And look at that, is Muliwasu come back into third place.
Fourth place.
Fourth place, sorry. So I wonder whether he might fancy he can deny Abraham Kiptum that third place on the podium. Those angles can sometimes foreshorten the advantages, but he's going to have to hang on. And look at this, Keegan's coming back alongside Lawrence Chirono. He really wants this.
And we're into the last kilometre of the race, with about 700 kilometres to run. The stadium very much in sight. Keegan back in the front, but hasn't yet dropped Chirono. So it's the two Kenyan athletes running side by side. The third place, Abraham Kiptum, trying to hang on to that third place. In fourth, the Ethiopian Muliwasu, just overtaken Amos Kipruto. But what a battle on the front. We haven't seen this in Amsterdam for a long time. There's the stadium. They can see the stadium 500 metres away from the finish line. And Chirono now back in the lead. Chirono and Norbert Keegan running side by side. Who's got the finishing speed?
What a race. 26 miles of drama, and we still don't know who's going to win. It should be a brilliant third place finish for Abraham Kiptum, but this is about the win. This is about who wants it the most.
And who's got track speed? because there's the entrance to the stadium. They'll have about 200, just over 200 metres of running on the tartan as they come into the stadium, and they're still locked together.
A truly magnificent sight, this stadium. Olympic history has been made here so many years ago, and history here in Amsterdam is about to be written again. It's going to be very, very close to the course record. It's still Lawrence Chirono with Norbert Kigen just behind him. He was the first to go to the front when the pacemakers dropped out, and he's going to do it here. What a magnificent run. Let's watch the clock. I think it's going to be a course record. Lawrence Chirono, with the performance of his life, wins the 42nd edition of the Amsterdam Marathon. A brilliant run by him, and a brilliant performance from Norbert Kigen, a PB and also inside the pre-existing course record. And what a run from the unheralded Abraham Kiptum, completing the podium, 2:05.25 unofficially, a gigantic personal best for the Kenyan. That's the 1-2-3 with Mule Wasihun coming across the line. A brilliant run from him, 2:05.38, and then a very tired-looking Amos Kipruto, who is at least rewarded with a personal best, coming across the line in fifth. 5 men, Richard, inside 2:06, once again underlining Amsterdam's status as one of the finest marathons in the world. What a race, what drama, what a fantastic day here in Holland.
And what a finish, Rob, what a finish. I mean, that battle over the last 5 kilometres between Keegan and Chirono, just amazing, and that's why we saw that course record. They were just fighting each other right the way to the finish line. And we're looking now at Abdi Nagea. Are we going to see another record being set here in Amsterdam? Remember, Nagea chasing the Dutch marathon record of 2 hours, 8 minutes and 21 seconds set by Camille Marsa here in Amsterdam. Is Nagea going to set a new national marathon record? Nagea turning towards the stadium entrance. Nagea's best time, remember, set in Rotterdam earlier this year, 2:09.34. Is Nagea 500 metres to go? I think Nagea, it is within his reach. Can he finish hard? Giving it his all.
He could just do this, Richard. It's 2:08.21. He's going to get a personal best. We know that for certain. And the PA announcers in the stadium are doing a fantastic job. They're telling the crowd that that is the time to beat. It's a national record that has stood for a decade. This is the man who came to Holland with his family at the age of 4, embraced by a new nation, and he has returned the country's gratitude by magnificent performances. And now he's onto the track. He's being roared on by everybody. 2:07.40. If he misses this, it's going to be by an absolute whisker. He's got to find it here. He's sprinting for his life here. It's by far the best performance of his career. And now he can see the finish. Come on. It's already a great run. Is it a moment of history for Dutch distance running? I think he's going to do it. It's close, but Abdi Nagea is going to set a new Dutch national record. A brilliant performance. He had to work so hard for that in the last few hundred metres. Perfect pacing throughout the entire race, and he's done it. He's the new national record holder.
He's the new national champion of Holland. He's the new national marathon champion, and he's smashed his best time for the marathon. He's taken 1 minute and 20 seconds off his best time, and the applause, Rob, for Nagea as he entered the stadium here was quite amazing. I remember just 2 years ago when he came here and ran the best time, which was more than 2 minutes slower than he's recorded today. But today, he has, I think he's just gone beyond his own expectations. He came here with a goal to improve on his lifetime best, 2:09.34. There he's being Well, we've seen some great performances, and the greatest of them all by the new winner, the new champion here in Amsterdam, Lawrence Chirono.
Okay, congratulations, fantastic race. How are you feeling?
I'm good, I'm happy because I won this race. I was not expecting to win.
Yes, it was in a great time, course record, personal record. Tell me about the last kilometer. What did you feel?
Actually, the race was somehow tough because we were almost all of us until 35 kilometers. Then I tried to push for like a little while. Then all of a sudden I saw that we are still there, all of us. I started to go back, to stay behind, to regain energy again. After 40k, we pushed. Then it was a lot of pressure anyway. Actually, it was very tough.
Okay. What did you think about the circumstances? Was it not too hot and too humid?
The humidity was very high, yes. But the first half, it was a tough time for us because the wind was coming towards us.
You must be happy to walk in Holland because you were second in Rotterdam and now first in Amsterdam. Do you like it here?
Yeah, I like the Netherlands actually because it has improved my time. Then it is the country that I like to be.
Okay, it's your third marathon you are winning. How come? How come you are in that shape?
It depends on my training. I actually trained very hard since May up to this far. Yeah, so it took me a lot of time. I took my time to prepare for this race.
Okay, how are you going to celebrate?
I'm celebrating because it is actually my PB. I should have to celebrate actually.
Okay, thank you very much.
So a very big personal best for Lawrence Chirono, taking more than a minute off his best time and becoming the new Amsterdam Marathon champion. There's Negea. What a day for him, coming back to Amsterdam and becoming not only the new Dutch marathon champion, but becoming the new Dutch marathon record holder, taking Camille Maas's national record, which has stood for 10 years. Camille Maas, he set the record here in Amsterdam 10 years ago, and today Negea has lowered that record by 5 seconds and done it in the best possible way, running a negative split. We saw him go through halfway in around 64.10, run the second half in almost the same time, just a few seconds quicker, and it was those few seconds that have taken him under the record. And what a day for him.
No, it was brilliant, wasn't it? I mean, you got the feeling when he made it onto the track, you thought, right, if he's going to miss this, it will literally be by about 2 or 3 seconds. It was so close.
And somehow he found that sprint, which is a lot harder to do than it looks when you've been running for 42 kilometres. But he found that extra effort.
I reckon the crowd might have given him 2 or 3 seconds. He was getting absolutely roared on. What a brilliant race, Richard. So many guys coming home inside 2:06. Such a high-quality race.
Yeah, I mean, it's the top quality, it's the best quality we've seen in Amsterdam. Last year we had 4 athletes under 2:06 for the first time. This year, 5 athletes under 2:06. There's the moment that Chirono broke the tape in a new course record for his 3rd marathon victory, having won in Prague and Honolulu last year. There's the top 10. There it is, Rob.
Lawrence Chirono is the champion. Personal best, new course record. Norbert Kigen, a massive PB for him. Abraham Kiptum 3rd. He smashed his lifetime best. And Mulle Wassihun also coming home inside 2:06. What a race. And such high quality.
I think one name that's missing from that list is Amos Kipruto, who also finished in under 2:06. So we did actually have 5 athletes finishing in under 2:06 with a new course record. And there's the rerun of Negea's final meters. looking desperately, and there is the moment he realised that he had indeed got the new marathon record, 2:08:16. So a new personal best and the new Dutch record for Negea.
I'm sure his interviews will go on, and hopefully, I know football's enormous here in Holland, but hopefully he'll get some of the newspaper headlines tomorrow when the papers come out. 5 men inside 2:06, that was a brilliant race.
And I remember being here, Rob, 2 years ago when Negea ran inside the qualifying time for the Rio Olympics. That was a very big moment for Negea, to know that he was on the Dutch team for the Olympics. That was his first Olympic appearance last year, where he finished 11th. But I think this year is an even bigger occasion for him, not only to run faster, but to take Camille Mars's record. And that's how close it was for Chirono, just managing to find that extra ounce of energy to outkick his compatriot Norbert Keegan. Chirono breaking the tape in 2 hours, 5 minutes and 7 seconds.
And what a record. He's now run 10 marathons and he's been on the podium in 9 of them. Dance music pumping out around the Olympic Stadium as we now turn our attention to the closing stages of the women's race, and that does indeed look as though it's Tadelesh Bekele, who was by some margin the fastest woman in the field on paper. Her 10th marathon.
And the interesting thing, Rob, is that she's yet to win a marathon. She's got a very impressive record of marathons over the past 3 years. She started running marathons 3 years ago in Berlin with a 2:23 time. She's improved on that time over the past 3 years, but over those 3 years has yet to win a big city marathon. And today looks like it's going to be her first big city victory. Looks like she's a couple of kilometres from the finish. Still got a male pacemaker with her.
Yeah, she just needs to hang on a little bit here. She's running well. It's not clear by the information we've got as to how far ahead she is, but I think she's running really well. As you said, Richard, she's run 9 marathons. She just missed a medal in the African Cross-Country Championships a few years ago. 4 times she's run inside 2:25. She just missed top spot on the podium last year in Toronto, finishing 2nd in 2:26. Her PB of 2:22 plus change came in Prague this year, where she finished 3rd. She's a very consistent half marathon runner as well, but this would be the biggest win of her career, you suspect, despite being on the podium in Prague and Toronto and running 2 excellent times in Berlin for 4th place in 2014 and 15. To finally come out on top would really mean a great deal to her. She'd follow in the footsteps of Meselesh Melkamu, who won last year for Ethiopia, and the legendary Gete Wami won back in 2002. So some great Ethiopian women have won this race, and not forgetting Tiki Galana the year before she became the Olympic champion in London.
Yes, I mean, we've talked about the dominance of the Kenyan athletes here in Amsterdam in the men's race, but I think in the women's race, as you're saying, Rob, Ethiopia has done as well as Kenya, if not better, with some great victories, including Meselesh Melkamu, and the course record. Wouldn't it be amazing, Rob, if we had the course record in the women's race, having seen it in the men's race and seen a new national Dutch record from Abdi Negea? So the new, well, the champion this year looks like it's going to be Tadelesh Bekele. Course record currently stands to the Ethiopian Meseret Hailu. That was set here in Amsterdam 5 years ago. Well, if Tadelesh Bekele is going to set a new course record, she's going to have to run at least a minute faster, slightly faster than a minute faster than her best, which currently stands at 2:22:23. But she's really, really working hard and being helped by her male pacemaker, Michael Mutai.
Mutai's got a lifetime best of 2:14, and he's doing everything he can, Richard, to try and increase the tempo of Tadalec Bekele. It's going to be a fine run for her. She's on the big screens in the Olympic Stadium. They're beginning to prepare to receive her arrival.
Well, I would say that Tadalec Bekele is right at the prime of her marathon career. She's running her 10th marathon here today. Been running marathons for 3 years. I've seen her come through the ranks in Ethiopia. She's been a regular participant in the Great Ethiopian Run 10K, finished 3rd there last year. Was 10th in the Great Ethiopian Run 2 years ago, and actually 2nd 4 years ago in 2013. So has progressed from being a 10K runner to running half marathons, has already run 22 half marathons in her career. But today is going to be the occasion when she wins her first big city marathon here in Amsterdam. The stadium in sight. Is she going to dip under her best time? She just turns the corner now with the stadium entrance in sight. Well, I think she's going to be outside. Yes, she's definitely going to be outside the course record of her compatriot Meseret Hailu, but it looks like she's going to set a new lifetime best here in Amsterdam. Remember, her lifetime best is 2 hours 22 and 23 seconds, and there's Tadalec Bekele going into the stadium.
What a race from the 26-year-old Ethiopian. This is a young woman reaching the peak of her powers. Twice 4th in Berlin, 3rd in Prague, 2nd in Toronto. Never before has she finished on top, and she's doing so in fine style here in Amsterdam. And she's going to break her personal best as well. This has been another step up in class for a woman who is finding her very best form here just when it counts. Now she can see the finish, and for the first time in her life she's going to run inside 2:22. This is an absolutely brilliant run. What a performance. Finally, in her 10th marathon, she wins. She takes the Amsterdam title in 2017 in a big new lifetime best, and you cannot ask any more of an athlete than a personal best when the pressure's on. She came here as the favourite, and she has delivered in style.
And Rob, what about that for consistency? This her 3rd marathon of 2017, ran a 2:23 time in Dubai, then went to Prague in May and ran 2:22, and has come here for her 3rd marathon 2017 and run 2:21. There's the moment she breasted the tape in a new lifetime best. Tadalec Bekele. Well, talk about that for consistency. 10 marathons, and today her first marathon victory, and being congratulated by her coach.
And I think, Richard, that's the 2nd fastest time we've ever seen from a woman on this course in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Tiki Galana ran 2:22.08 when she won in 2011. That's an absolutely sensational performance.
And there's Abdi Nagea being interviewed by I'm guessing, a lot of Dutch journalists asking about his race, what a race it's been for him. New Dutch marathon record today. And I'm sure we're going to see him run even faster in the years to come. I'm sure he's got his eyes on Tokyo in 3 years' time, having competed so well in Rio last year, where he finished 11th in his first Olympic appearance. Wouldn't it be good to see him competing for Holland in 3 years' time in Tokyo? And there's the women's winner, PB 2:21.54, taking 29 seconds off her best. part of a very strong group being supervised by Gitani Tessema there in the background, coaching a number of the Ethiopian athletes who are racing here in Amsterdam.
And Richard, just at the bottom of your picture there, you can see the second-placed athlete coming home in the women's race. It's going to be a fine performance inside 2 hours, 25 minutes. She's punching the air in delight. Unofficial time for second place, 2:24.51. Couldn't actually see from our position who it was.
I wonder if that was the debutant Gladys Chizir from Kenya. We'll find out very soon who that was, the second place women, and the third placed female athlete just crossing the line, just outside 2:25. I think that might be an Ethiopian. So the first 4 female athletes home in the women's race, all of them inside 2:26, so a very strong women's race. We'll bring you those results as soon as we have them.
There they are, cutting some exhausted figures.
There's the third placed athlete, Viola Kibiwot, running for the first time here in Amsterdam, her second marathon of 2017, having run in Hamburg earlier this year.
And what a run, Richard, from Gladys Chizir. We knew how good she was. She's the 15th fastest in history over 10K with 30.41. And she's run 66.57 in rack. What a great debut.
What a job.
There's Chizir finishing, and that's why she looks so happy as she comes across the finish line. Chizir running her debut marathon, coached by the great Italian coach Renata Canova, finishing here second place.
You
in a
drink
great
something because
time,
it's very hot now.
under 2 hours 25 for her debut marathon. She has a best time 66.57 from the half marathon in Ras Al Khaimah. And today, what a performance in her debut marathon, finishing second behind the Ethiopian Tadalech Bekele.
Yeah, that's a great run, isn't it? That is a great run. She's continuing her list of great performances over great distances. One of the fastest women in history over 10K. That is how much 2:24.50 took out of her for the marathon here today. And, you know, what are we, local time? We're a couple of minutes away from midday. It's hot.
It is warm, Rob. We've forgotten to talk about that just over the last half hour. And we heard Lawrence Chirono mention that, how warm it was. And in conditions like this, you would not expect records to fall, but we've seen so many records fall. Personal bests have fallen, the course record has fallen, the Dutch marathon record has fallen, and all in very, very warm conditions. The temperature's now around 20 degrees, which is far from ideal marathon temperature. So what a day it's been here in Amsterdam. A new champion in the men's race, Lawrence Chirono, and a new course record, a new Dutch marathon record from Abdi Nagea, and a new champion in the women's race in the form of Tadalech Bekele. Well, thanks for being with us today in Amsterdam. It's been a great day and we've really enjoyed our coverage. We hope that you'll be with us next year for another Amsterdam Marathon.